Hello and welcome to the Weekend Edition. I'm Dr. Kingori. We have yet another classic show lined up for you. Now, this is one of those action-filled weeks, Mazi. Nominated Senator Beatrice Kwamboka has sued KQ, that is Kenya Airways, after they allegedly moved her from business class to economy in a flight. It's very sad to see that now even politicians do not want to be associated with the Kenyan economy. Now, in her suit, Honorable Kwamboka has claimed that she is deeply disturbed by the callous manner in which she was treated by the respondents, employees, that is Kenya Airways employees, and humiliated by being forced to travel in a class that is not commensurate with her honorable standards, lifestyle, and financial ability. In other words, it could be argued that being an ODM-nominated senator, this was her way to distance herself from the hustler movement. Now, for what it's worth, I do not understand the people who are criticizing the senator for suing KQ for moving her from business class, yet the senator's anger is the same reaction Kenyans had when Education CS Professor Magoha suggested that pupils be moved from class wapelekwe chini ya mti. And that's Kenya for you. And you still wonder why Kenya is considered a developing country. But then how is Kenya a developing country? In fact, how is Kenya a developing country, especially after the recent admission by President Uhuru that people in government steal 2 billion shillings every single day? Ati watu wako kwa serikali wanaiba 2 billion kila siku. Funny country this is. The leader of opposition now defends the president. In return, the president is now a whistleblower. The president made this admission while defending the Building Bridges initiative. Get this. BBI is about inclusivity. To mean that if BBI passes, everybody will be in government. I'll call this leveling the playing field. I think instead of complaining, Kenya should support BBI and wait for your turn to take home 2 billion shillings. Upande wa pili wa studio pia walikuwa na own goal.
Kwa uzia manifesto, sisi ni watu ya sera. Kama mnavyoona, chama yangu ni chama ya UDF. Wanasema
Wow. Whenever have you ever seen Kenyan politicians so united? It's not UDF, it's UDA. And when they say that, they said it like it was rehearsed. Moral of the story here, these politicians don't give an F. And whatever the F he meant, it's only those politicians who knew which party he was referring to. I'm just wowed by the unity and swiftness with which Tanga leaders respond to political statements. This right here was also how fast they responded to the president's remarks on rotational presidency. But then again, what is all the hulabaloo about rotational presidency? Watu wanakasirikia nini? I thought that's what we've had since independence. We started with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, then it went to President Moi, to President Kibaki, and then back to where it started. And there's a rumor that kuna watu wanataka irudi tena kwa Moi. Ama mimi ndio sijui rotation. Anyway, still on politics, after voting for change in January 1986, last week, Ugandans voted to make Uganda the same again. This goes to prove that truly change is the only thing that remains constant. Ugandans now have a new president. Kindly note, there's a difference between a new president and a new president. America has a new president. Uganda has a new president. I knew Museveni is going to take this thing. Now, President Museveni has clinched the top seat in the recently concluded elections, and one of the highlights from the campaigns has to be a tweet shared on his Twitter a few days before the big day. And I quote, "In several meetings with the youth, they challenged me to do the Jerusalem Challenge. When I consulted, I was told it's a popular song by South African stars. Of course, I would have loved to dance my own, another rap, but due to popular demand, I concede." To mean, Museveni can concede to a South African musician, but not to a musician from Uganda. Call that the digital way of solving things. Museveni did not even dance to the Jerusalem Challenge. He got someone to animate him dancing to the challenge. I think maybe other African leaders should borrow a leaf from that. If something's hard to implement, you get someone to animate you doing it, like fighting corruption. On the matter of not supporting a local musician for the top seat, we have to give President Museveni the credit he deserves. He himself is a rapper. So if there's anyone who knows how bad a Ugandan musician is to lead the country, if that's the case, then he may be coming from a point of experience. And come to think of it, one could argue that That was not a presidential election Uganda had. It was a rap battle. Now, since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the biggest hope of things getting back to normal has been pegged on finding a vaccine. Now, there have been several reports of a breakthrough in the horizon in that field. And now, the concept of vaccination, by the way, has very many enemies, and maybe that's what holds things back. Now, it's barely a month since Kenyans heard that vaccines worth hundreds of millions had expired at a Kenyan airport due to negligence. Now, other than just carelessness, one of the biggest enemies of vaccination is misinformation. Now, in this episode, we managed to get hold of a scientist to help us break down the vaccine-making process and how it works. Now, from the relationship and the trust we have built on this show so far, this is one of these episodes you should not miss for anything. On the other end of this short commercial break, we have Dr. Sammy Ndungu, a scientist and the managing director of Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, one of the leading biopharmaceutical companies in the world. Dr. Sammy is here to give us an informed perspective of what the world of vaccines hold and, most importantly, how they work. See you guys in a bit. Welcome back to the Wicked Edition. I'm Dr. Kingori. Show nzito tena kama kawaida maze. We couldn't let this conversation go. Personally, I couldn't let this conversation go. History ilianza kwa na value, ilianza na value of vaccination. Alafu ikaenda kwa vile dawa you work. And this conversation nikisema tulikuwa tunaongea na a scientist, one of the few in this country, anaitwa Sammy Ndungu. Na tulianza na mastori za maugonjwa na vile dawa inawaka, nikajembe hii maze lazima tuwalete kwa TV. I am very curious about this na inaniwasha sana. Karibu sana on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Manzi, asante sana. Unaona leo mpaka niko na notes because sijui nitaanzia wapi, but I think let me settle on. When we spoke first, uliniambia ati there are 26 diseases in the world. So siku understand your first bit.
I didn't quite say that. What I said is that today
Yes.
we have 26 diseases that are actually vaccine preventable.
Oh,
These are diseases you could just protect yourself against by getting immunized.
Yes.
There are 20 others for which work is ongoing today by more greater scientists than I would ever be to develop vaccines against those other 20.
Oh,
so that is in the pipeline.
My curiosity, unajua mimi I stand to be corrected on this set. Nasemanga kitu alafu unakorektiwa. Kama
Okay.
my understanding, yeah, there's a vaccine for cholera.
Yes, there is a vaccine for cholera.
Thank you. Now, for me, when you mentioned there's a vaccine for cholera, what comes to my mind is the science of how it works. Kama brake pads.
Come on, break pad.
What's the science of how a vaccine works? Because I understand that there are people who have a problem with the idea of introducing a disease into someone's body so that the disease can be treated.
Okay. I think saying that you're introducing a disease for the person to be protected is a bit aggressive. I think it's a bit on the extreme scale. It's related to what happens, but that's not necessarily precise in the sense that how vaccines work and what we do with vaccines really, we actually prepare the human body in advance for an impending invasion of a bacteria or a viral disease or a viral agent. How we do this? We either get an inactivated particle of the virus or the bacteria or a weakened one. Key here is it is inactivated, so it completely has no possibility of causing that disease. It is also weakened and tested to the extent that it has no way of also causing the disease. So it's either an inactivated, which is a killed particle, protein in this case, coming, or a component of the DNA coming from the bacterial agent. So without a doubt, we will need to get the bacteria or the virus, grow it several times so that you are able to get then the antigens, the proteins. You extract the proteins from that bacteria and you use this to give, to make a vaccine. How does the vaccine work? By introducing this particle, let's use it for purposes of a particle extracted from the virus or the bacteria in this case. When you introduce it into the body senses that it is under invasion of the actual disease. Don't forget the first part that this particle so introduced in the vaccine has no capability whatsoever of causing the disease. Okay. But because the receptors, the proteins are exactly the same as that one in the live agent, The body senses as if it is under invasion, and therefore it develops a specific immune response
For
that
that disease.
neutralizes the disease when it does occur.
So when you say weakening the agent that causes a disease, sijui growing the bacteria and weakening it, the impression that comes to my mind ni ati you have a farm of diseases. Mko na shamba ya magonjwa, ati hapa tunalea cholera, hapa tunalea hizo sijui ya pneumonia, akale ni pneumonia kidogo. But zile ni pneumonia strong sasa, they need to be weak before they get introduced to someone's body. And I understand, first of all, is that true?
Actually, what you've said is not far from the truth. However, you've left out the fact that this growing of these facilities happens in very, very high security operations. Actually, laboratory biosafety level 3 for most of them. That means that, it is in a highly, highly controlled environment. Because yes, there is no way you can make a vaccine without the agent. We cannot have a vaccine for a disease that does not exist.
So you confirm that munafuga magonjwa?
That is without a doubt. We have to grow the virus, we have to grow the bacteria. The virus, we may not necessarily be able to grow it on its own. You need to get a vector, you need to get an agent that you can use to propagate. And that is where biotechnology comes in, where you get the DNA of the virus, for instance, insert it, for instance, in a yeast cell and use the yeast cell to propagate this virus, then extract it, yes, purify, inactivate, and use it to make a vaccine. Remember, however, as I mentioned when we first spoke, that it is not literally that you grow the bacteria, inactivate it, and you go then next and expose people to it. No. There are many, many, many steps that are crucial from the time you get a disease outbreak to when you have a concept that you can use to develop the vaccine, to testing it first in getting a proper model for it, testing it in animal models, long before you can actually do now the now famous clinical trials of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3.
I understand that there's a level to which the vaccine has to be tested in human beings, and that's where the COVID vaccine comes. COVID vaccine process comes where people are asked to volunteer, waende wadungwe na hiyo vaccine to see how it works. How much do they pay for the attempted murder?
I think there is a significant difference between being a volunteer for a vaccine and being a test pilot. It's not the same risk, really. It's not the same level. A test pilot, then you're trying the plane for the first time up there. No, it's not the same. Remember, before it is exposed to humans, first there has been animal models. Then there has been a very small group of people, sometimes 10 of them, to just assess safety and to also have an immunogenicity to assess whether it is actually giving an immune response, which is what protects us from the disease. And upon producing an immune response, is the immune response relevant in neutralizing the disease? It's not just enough that you had a response to the vaccine. The antibodies you've formed, are they capable of neutralizing the disease? By the time you come to then that's phase 1, 10, phase 2, maybe 400 people. By the time it comes to phase 3, which is when now it leaves the country of origin and goes to many, many different countries.
Yes.
Remember, Dr. Kingori, you'd ask yourself, if a vaccine is only tried in America, how will you know it will work for you? Vaccines transcend race. They transcend geographies. They transcend tribe. They transcend religions. It is an honorable thing that it is tested as widely as possible to confirm that it will indeed protect the people of the world.
So you're confirming that diseases also practice racism and tribalism?
I didn't say that. I said vaccines transcend. They go beyond. They have to protect everyone, regardless of what they believe or they don't believe, regardless of what they like or what they don't like, regardless of how they look like or what language they speak or the skin of their color. Vaccines transcend all that. And it's extremely important, therefore, for them to be tested everywhere.
That's interesting. And that brings me to another point that you actually mentioned before. People have, you had a word for it.
Omission bias.
Not omission bias, the idea of people not taking diseases seriously because they were actually eliminated totally.
Yes. In fact, bottom line is this: vaccines work. Vaccines work so well that they've become their own worst enemies.
Yes.
Diseases that used to wipe generations. And I mentioned this to you. At the age of my grandmother's age, there are women who lost all their children. Families were wiped out by measles.
Yes.
We had multiple cases of acute flaccid paralysis from polio. It's now becoming more and more like a disease of the old age. It's looking like it was a disease for the old people. No, there is still no cure. No one will tell you of a cure for polio. No one. The only thing, this disease has almost been eliminated, 99%, is purely because of vaccination.
I'd like you to confirm this. If now that scientists work day and night, if you came up with a solution like a one universal vaccine that you are immune from any disease, as in one human being, if you get this vaccine, no disease can touch you, bacteria, viral, whichever. Is there enough space on Earth for all of us?
Doc, there is enough space. There are many, many parts of this world that are still not inhabited. Plenty of them. But having said that, it's important to mention today, what you said about an ideal vaccine is actually not far-fetched. Ideally, it should be one which you get orally when you are born, and you are protected for life against all diseases.
So you will never fall sick.
And as scientists, believe it or not, are always working to find ways to make immunization as easy, as convenient as possible. Today we have diseases that are combined into one vaccine, like for the cases of children, you have a 6-in-1 vaccine, for instance, against diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, haemophilus, influenza, and hepatitis B in one shot. So you never know during our lifetime. Scientists could be able to combine more and more diseases so that people can be protected against as many diseases as possible. There are still, vaccines we'll never be able to develop, like against road accidents.
Yes.
There are still vaccines we'll never be able to get.
And corruption. Now, now COVID-19, when the disease started gaining traction and publicity, there was talk of it will take a minimum of 18 months to develop the vaccine, right? And you also mentioned that for a vaccine to be developed, the disease has to exist. You can't create a vaccine for a disease that is not there. So why 18 months? Why that long? All the scientists in the world uniting against one thing for 18 months. Why?
The process. There are just aspects of development of vaccines to ensure not only safety, to ensure also immunogenicity, that it's a laborious process. There are steps you will not jump. You will not go to human models before you've gone through the preclinical stages where you try it on animal models, test, and find out that if this works. In fact, we are lucky that we are saying 18 months. On average, it takes 10 years to bring a vaccine to vaccination, to bring people to receive the vaccine. On average, it takes 10 years. We are lucky because there is unprecedented work done by scientists day and night today to actually work on previously known platforms. Okay. And a good example is we already had SARS-CoV-1.
Yes.
And COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. So yes, a good number of companies are using the knowledge gained from SARS-CoV-1 to fast-track the development of a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2. However, and I want to say this without fear of contradiction, that no step will be skipped in ensuring safety of these vaccines and safety and protection of the ultimate recipients when we do get a vaccine.
Okay. Is there a better name for the people who volunteer for these immunization practicals other than models? Because models make it sound like a career path for some people. Hey, maze nilimodelia cholera last year, maze nilipeleka mbio.
Actually, in fact, I was referring to animal models. For the human subjects, they actually called volunteers. They actually are volunteers, yes. They're volunteers. They volunteer.
I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theories hapa, ama that's why my model ukuwa wamekonda. Unajua? That's why they have, because maybe that's the origin of the word model. Herd immunity. How does herd immunity work? Final thing. You can just address that. How does herd immunity work? I liked your explanation, but if you could kindly explain it to our audience.
Herd immunity simply means that when you've immunized a significant number of population, a significant part of the population, even the people who are not immunized, they are protected indirectly because the people who have been immunized stop the spread of the disease. They disrupt transmission. They disrupt transmission, they stop
Yes.
the spread, and therefore the few people who never got immunized, for whatever reasons, I don't want to go into the details of why, those ones then get indirect protection because the disease has been, the spread has been eliminated in the community. So that is herd immunity, yes.
They feel like the disease does not exist because haijawafikia.
In fact, I dare say, they can come up with all sorts of theories why they are still healthy without having gotten immunized, without realizing it's thanks to their neighbors who got immunized.
Ah, okay. Sawa sawa basi. And in terms of immunization, yeah, I believe my understanding is the process of wrestling with germs. As in, it's basically that. Correct?
It is a process of preparing the body for actual wrestling. It's the same as hiking to get fit.
Or it's a gym for...
Yes. The body gets prepared.
And if you've been immunized and it takes long before the disease comes, whatever was introduced in your body will not feel idle and start playing around with you, where that's actually the disease.
Again, remember what was introduced had no way of causing the disease in the first instance. You have antibodies, but you raised up an important point. And this is something I would urge everyone to check with their healthcare provider about their immunization status. It's true. There are certain diseases for which you need to get frequent boosters of immunization from time to time. Some of them give you lifelong protection. That's true. Polio is a good, measles, sorry. Measles is a good example. But others, you need to get boosters from time to time. So it's good to check your immunization status with your doctor. And not to assume that immunization is a kalongolongo affair for small children.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
COVID has shown us that even adults need to get immunized.
Okay. Sawa sawa. Thank you, sir. I believe yani kuna so much talk about, and in the interest of time, I don't want to introduce another line of questions, but I believe we can take this to another platform. Asante sana for coming to our show, and I hope the information we've shared is enough kuchanua mtu kidogo, and most importantly, if you can just misspell one cause of misinformation for people as far as vaccines is concerned, we can call it a day.
So, as I said again, the misconception about vaccines is mainly because of diseases that are not known. What the cause is not known, what is called idiopathic diseases. And people tend, because these diseases have grievous outcomes, people tend to associate them with immunization. It is not true. Those diseases have existed even before immunization. They exist in countries where immunization has not been done. And there is no connection between those severe outcome diseases and immunization. It's a misconception. We tend to see causes in coincidence, but that is not the case.
Okay. Asante sana, and thank you once again. I hope next time we'll get to witchcraft. That's it for the Wicked Edition. See you next week. My name is Dr. Kingori.